Gotów! Gotów, dowódco! Baczność! Szeregu! Zbiórka! Szeregu! Zbiórka! Uwaga! dowódco! Gotów, dowódco! Szeregu, zbiórka! dowódco! Gotów, dowódco! Gotów do wymaszerowania!
Vor der Kaserne, vor dem großen Tor, steht eine Laterne, steht sie noch davor. Dort wollen wir uns wiedersehen, bei der Laterne wollen wir.
So our Prime Minister has come back from his third and greatest journey, and he said
that the settlement of the Czechoslovakian problem, which has now been achieved, is, in my view, only the prelude to a larger settlement in which all Europe may find peace. This morning, I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine. Some of you perhaps have already heard what it contains, but I would just like to read it to you. We, the German Führer and Chancellor, and the British Prime Minister
Gotów do wymaszerowania!
are agreed in recognizing that the question of Anglo-German relations is of the first importance for the two countries and for Europe. We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again. We are resolved that the method of consultation shall be the method adopted to deal with any other questions that may concern our two countries, and we are determined to continue our efforts to remove possible sources of difference and thus to contribute to assure the peace of Europe.
Dowódco! Tak jest! Gotów do wymaszerowania! Gotów! Baczność! Gotów do wymaszerowania! Gotów, dowódco! Uwaga! Gotów! Baczność! Gotów, dowódco! Tak jest! Tak jest! Przygotowania! Uwaga! Ruszać się!
The British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note, stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from
Gotów,
Poland,
dowódco!
a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you
Uwaga!
now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
Dowódco, wycofują się! Odwrót!
You can imagine what a bitter reality
Tak jest!
that all night long struggle to win peace and fame. Yet I cannot believe that there is
Łączność!
anything more I could have done and could have
Łączność!
been more successful. Up to the very last,
Uwaga!
it would have been quite possible to have arranged peaceful and honorable settlement between Germany and Poland.
Gotów!
But Hitler would not have it. He had evidently made up his mind to attack Poland
Uwaga!
whatever happened. And although he now says he put forward reasonable proposals
Tak
which
jest!
were rejected by the Poles, that is not a true statement. The proposals were never shown to the Poles, nor to us.
Jakieś rozkazy?
And though they were announced in the German broadcast on Thursday night, Hitler did not wait to hear comment on all
Gotów!
his troops across the Polish frontier. His action showed convincingly
Tak jest!
that there is no chance of expecting that this man will ever give up his practice of using
Za mną!
force to gain
Marsz!
his will. He can only be stopped by force. And we in France are today in
Szeregu!
fulfillment of our
Zbiórka!
obligation, going to the aid of Poland, who is so bravely resisting this wicked and unprovoked attack.
Uwaga!
We
Tak
have
jest!
here. We have done all that any country could do to establish a situation in which no word given by Germany's ruler
Gotów, dowódco!
no people or country could feel itself safe and become intolerable. And now that we have resolved to finish it, I know that you will all play your part with calmness and courage.
Za mną! Marsz! Gotów do wymaszerowania! Uwaga! Szeregu, zbiórka! Gotów, dowódco!
Speaker, on Friday evening last, I received His Majesty's commission to form a new administration. It was the evident wish and will of Parliament and the nation that this should be conceived on the broadest possible basis, and that it should include all parties, both those who supported the late government and also the parties of the opposition. I have completed the most important part of this task. A war cabinet has been formed of 5 members,
Ruszać się!
representing with the Liberal opposition the unity of the nation. The 3 party leaders have agreed to serve either in the war cabinet or in high executive office. The 3 fighting services have been filled. It was necessary that this should be done in one single day on account of the extreme urgency and rigor of events.
Jakieś rozkazy?
A number of other key positions were filled yesterday, and I'm
Gotów do...
further administrative measures tonight. I hope to complete the appointment of the principal ministers during tomorrow. The appointment of the other ministers usually takes a little longer, but I trust that when Parliament meets again, this part of my task will be completed, and that the administration will be complete in all respects. Sir, I considered it in the public interest
Szeregu!
that the House
Zbiórka!
be summoned to meet today. Mr. Speaker agreed and took the necessary steps in accordance with the powers conferred upon him by the resolution of the House. At the end of the proceedings today, the adjournment of the House will be proposed until Tuesday, the 21st of May, with, of course, provision for earlier meeting if need be.
Tak jest!
The business to be considered during this week will be notified to members at the earliest opportunity. I now invite the House, by the resolution which stands in my name, to record its approval of the steps taken
Szeregu!
and to declare
Zbiórka!
confidence in the new government. Sir, to form an administration of this scale and complexity is a serious undertaking in itself. But it must be remembered that we are in the
Szeregu!
preliminary stage of
Zbiórka!
one of the greatest battles in history. That we are in action at many points in Norway and in Holland. That we have to be prepared in the Mediterranean. That the air battle is continuous. And that many preparations have to be made here at home. In this crisis, I hope I may be pardoned if I do not address the House of today. I hope that any of my friends and colleagues or former colleagues who are affected by the political reconstruction will make all allowances for any lack of ceremony with which it has been necessary
Gotów,
to act.
dowódco!
I would say to the House, as I said to those who have joined the government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous.
Namierzamy cel!
We have before us many, many long months of struggle and of suffering.
Uwaga!
You ask what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war by sea, land, and air.
Gotów!
With all our might, with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalogue of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word: victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory however long and hard the road may be. But without victory there is no survival. Let that be realized. No survival for the British Empire. No survival for all that the British Empire stood for. No survival for the urge and impulse of the ages that mankind will move forward towards its goal. But I take up my task with buoyancy and hope. I feel sure that our cause will not be suffered to fail among men. This time I feel entitled to claim the 8th. I say,
Szeregu, zbiórka! Gotów, dowódco! Kontynuować natarcie! Gotów do wymaszerowania! Uwaga! Pod ostrzałem! Gotów! Szeregu, zbiórka!
This was a great trial of strength between the British and German air forces. Can you conceive a greater objective for the Germans in the air than to make evacuation from these beaches impossible? And to sink all these ships which were displayed almost to the extent of thousands. Could there have been an objective of greater military importance and significance? For the whole purpose of the war was this. They tried hard, and they were beaten back. They were frustrated in their task. We got the army away, and they have paid
Yes.
fourfold for any losses which they have inflicted. Sir, when we consider how much greater would be our advantage in defending the air above this island against an overseas attack,
Gotów!
I must say that I find in these facts a sure basis upon which practical and reassuring thoughts may rest. I will pay my tribute to these young airmen. The great French army was very largely, for the time being, cast back and disturbed for the onrush for a few thousand of armored vehicles. May it not also be that the cause of civilization itself will be defended by the skill and devotion of a few thousand airmen? There never has been, I suppose, in all the world, Mr. Speaker, the disastrous military events which have happened during the past fortnight have not come to me with any sense of surprise. Indeed, I indicated a fortnight ago, as clearly as I could to the House, that the worst possibilities were open. And I made it perfectly clear that whatever happened in France would make no difference to the resolve of Britain and the British to fight on, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. I have thought it right upon this occasion to give the House and the country some indication of the solid, practical grounds upon which we base our inflexible resolve to continue the war. There are a good many people who say, never mind, win or lose, sink or swim, better die than submit to tyranny, and such a tyranny. And I do not dissociate myself from them. But I can assure them that our professional advisors of the three services unitedly advise that we should carry on the war, and that there are good and reasonable hopes of final victory. We have
Gotów,
fully
dowódco!
informed and consulted all the self-governing communities. These great communities, far beyond the oceans, who have been built up on our laws and on our civilization, and who are absolutely free to choose their course, but are absolutely devoted to the ancient motherland,
Odwrót!
feel themselves inspired by the same emotions which lead me to stake our all upon duty alone. We do not yet know what will happen in France, or whether the French resistance will be prolonged, both in France and in the French Empire.
Naprzód!
The French government is throwing away great opportunities
Szeregu, zbiórka!
and casting adrift their future.
Trzymać dystans!
Continue the war in accordance with
Wycofujemy
their
się!
treaty obligations, from which we have not felt able to release them.
Kontynuować natarcie!
Strengthen the historic declaration, in which resistance
Mocność!
and we have proclaimed our willingness at the dark side of French history to include union of common citizenship in this struggle. However matters may go in France, or with the French government or other French governments, we in this island and in the British Empire We'll never lose our sense of comradeship with the French people. If we are now called upon to endure what they have been suffering, we shall emulate their culture. And if final victory rewards our toil, they shall share the gain. Aye, and freedom shall be restored to all. We abate nothing of our just demand. Not one jot or tittle do we recede. Czechs, Poles, Norwegians, Dutch, Belgians have joined their causes to our own. All these shall be restored. What General Weygand calls the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our own British life and the long continuity of our
Gotów do wymaszerowania!
The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned on us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be free, and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit uplands. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss of a new dark age, made more sinister and perhaps more protracted by the lights of perverted science. Let us, therefore, brace ourselves to our duty, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
Baczność! Gotów do wymaszerowania! Kontynuować natarcie! Tak jest! Szeregu, zbiórka! Biegiem, biegiem, biegiem! jest! Szeregu, zbiórka!
Малодушие, беспечность, вот настроение мирного строительства. Вполне понятно, что военное время, но пагубно в настоящее время, когда война коренным образом изменила положение. Враг жесток и неумолим. Он ставит свои цели, охват наших земель, перед их нашим током. Охват нашего хранящей нефти, похоть их нашим трудом.
Tak jest!
Он ставит свои цели расположение, власть
Szeregu,
правительства,
zbiórka!
распространение царизма, разрушение национальной культуры и национальной распаствованности русских, украинцев, белорусов,
Uwaga!
литовцев, латышей, эстонцев.
Naprzód! Odmaszerować! Ruchy! 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 Kontynuować natarcie! Wycofać się! Ruchy! 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 Obrót! Biegiem! Biegiem! Biegiem!
The United States was at peace with that nation. And as the legislature
Gotów!
passed, still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleague delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. And while this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of war or of armed attack. It will be recorded that the distance of
Biegiem!
Hawaii
Biegiem!
from
Biegiem!
Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned
Szeregu! Zbiórka!
many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately
Za mną!
sought
Marsz!
the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military
Kryjemy
forces.
się!
And very many American lives have been lost.
Odmaszerować!
American San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against the Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked...
Biegiem! Biegiem! Biegiem!
Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam.
Kontynuować natarcie!
Last night, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. And this morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications for the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all
Baczność!
measures be taken for our defense.
Kontynuować natarcie!
All with our whole nation.
Odmarszyrować!
The character of the unsworn against. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
Uwaga! Tak jest! Gotów!
Vor der Kaserne, vor dem großen Tor, steht eine Laterne, steht sie noch davor. Dort wollen wir uns wiedersehen, bei der Laterne wollen wir stehen, wie einst Lili Marleen, wie einst Lili Marleen. Unsere beiden Schatten sahen wir eine aus, dass wir lieb uns hatten, das sah man gleich daraus. Und alle Leute sollen sehen, wir beide
Biegiem, biegiem, biegiem!
stehen, wie einst Lili Marleen, wie einst Lili Marleen. Deine Schritte kennt sie, deinen schönen Gang. Alle Abend brennt sie, doch mich vergaß sie lang. Und sollte mir ein Leid geschehen, dann wird bei der Laterne stehen, mit dir, Lili Marleen, mit dir, Lili Marleen. Aus dem stillen Raume, aus der Erde Grund, hebt sich wie im Traume dein verliebter Mund. Wenn sich die Schwebe nebendrehen,
Ruchy!
Laterne stehen, mit mir
Namierzam cel!
mit dir, Lili.
Baczność! Gotów do wymaszerowania! Ruszamy się! Szeregu, zbiórka! Tak jest! Namierzam cel! Oddział stać! Szeregu, zbiórka! Ruszać się!
This is a talk on national
Kontynuować natarcie!
was enough of the whole purpose of your presence. To keep you now, your children later, your grandchildren much later, out of a last-ditch war for the preservation of American independence. Of all the things that American independence means to you, to me, and ours. Never
Uwaga!
change down our
Dowódco, wycofują się!
being in such danger as now. The Nazi masters of Germany made it clear that they intend not only to dominate all life force in their own country, but also to
Naprzód!
enslave the whole of Europe, then to use the resources of Europe to dominate the rest of the world. View of the nature of this undeniable threat, it can be asserted properly and categorically that the United States has no right or reason to encourage talk of peace until the day shall come when there is a clear intention on the part of the aggressor nations to abandon all thought of dominating or conquering the world. The forces of the states that are leagued against all people who live in freedom are being held away from our shores. The Germans and Italians are being blocked on the other side of the Atlantic by the British and by the Greeks and by thousands of soldiers and sailors who are able to escape from subjugated countries. The Japanese are being engaged in China, in Asia, by the Chinese nation in another great defense. In the Pacific
Uwaga!
is our fleet, guns loaded with explosive bullets, economic as well as military. Frankly and definitely, there is danger ahead. Danger against which we must prepare. But we well know we cannot escape danger or the fear of it by crawling into bed and pulling the covers over our heads. Germany has said that she was occupying Belgium to save the Belgians from the British. Would she hesitate then to say to any South American country, we are occupying you to protect you from aggression by the United States? Belgium is being used as